Welcome to the Extraordinary Podcast, where we identify God's uncommon work in common life. Recognizing God's work requires intentionality, but articulating it motivates and inspires. Don't forget to subscribe to never miss an episode. In today's episode, I have a conversation with Alshandra and Olbin, where they share about their work at the Compassionate Ministry Center in Cactus, Texas, as well as what brought them there, their life's journey that started in South Africa, how God called them to make sacrifices for Him, and what those sacrifices meant, and how they were faithful and obedient to the calling that God had given them. So let's get into the conversation today. Alshandra and Olbin, thank you for taking time to be here today. Just a little bit of background before we begin. You guys were at our Iowa District Assembly.
Yes.
Which happened to happily coincide with our sweet corn picking season. And so this is Monday, and you guys got to enjoy picking sweet corn with us. Right. And so kind of a spur of the moment, I asked you guys to come in here and record. So I appreciate you taking time to share with us and allow your story to impact us. And as we begin, you both have your Cactus Ministry shirts on. Could you share a little bit about Cactus and what the ministry does there?
Sure, I would love to do that. So Cactus Nazarene Ministries, driven by the gospel of Jesus Christ, is really focused on ensuring that people's needs are met in our community. Our community has a vast number of needs. Cactus has got around, we think, 26 nationalities in a town of 3,000 people. So it's quite diverse, which means we have quite a few needs that people have. Some of the key things we try to or choose to do. So Cactus Nazarene Ministries is making a shift. Our strategy has moved now to being about community development. What we don't want to do is be a place that just gives stuff away. We want to empower people and make them self-sufficient. So our strategy has shifted a little bit, and now we focus on those things we think people need to be able to live in the US, especially since we have mainly refugees and asylum seekers. So what that looks like, we have 4 key pillars in our strategy. The first is empower. How do we empower people to take control of their lives? In some cases, that requires advocacy on our part, which is why we have immigration services. We talk about equipping people. How do we equip them to make sure that their lives here in the US, they understand the landscape, understand the value of money, and so forth. So we teach through our children and family ministries, families, how to do life in the US. We have our educate, which is our 3rd pillar, and that's really around not just education as it relates to English, but how do we allow our children in our community to understand that the sky's the limit in terms of what they can do. So we help them with homework in our after-school program. We teach them about Jesus, but we also help them to improve their grade level. Because of their lack of English, many of them are about 2 grade levels behind. So we spend a lot of time trying to bring them up to grade level. Our programs run through summer to give them a better opportunity when they go back into the school year as well. And then last, but certainly not least, is that evangelism is critical for us. And we think that that is the thread that holds everything else we do in ministry together. So it's okay for us to stop in the middle of a session and have a prayer with an individual who comes in. It's okay for us to say, can we pray for you? It's okay for us to say, you know, I can only tell you my story, and my story says that Jesus is the only way out of this. And we find that our community is really open to that. Evangelism and the spiritual aspect of what we do encompasses the holistic view of our ministry, because we do try to make sure that people's needs are met holistically. Do we have relief programs? Yes, we do. Because there's some people who come in and they just need food, or they just need clothing, or a warm coat, and we meet those needs. But that's not what we want the community to know us for only. We want to know that in 5 years' time, the community, the people that we've helped, have been able to move forward and become something more than when they just arrived in the US.
Are you able to give us a tangible example of part of what you're doing? You're teaching a whole new system for these individuals to understand.
Correct.
Can you give us an example of what that looks like for somebody from their old way of life, their old place where they were living, to here?
Sure. So, a couple of big things. Number one is they come out of a country where the value of money is very different from the dollar. They get paid in dollars through JBS, the meat packing plant. It's a lot of money that they get, but they don't understand that. And the result of that is we'll have somebody who's in Africa, whose family is in Africa, and they will actually send them $2,000 to Africa and live in poverty here. Simply because they don't understand that actually sending $2,000 to Africa is giving them about 40,000 of their own currency to live on, you know. So there's simple things like that we try to do. Another example is that the moms that come in, or just the family, they walk into Walmart. We walked into Walmart the first time and we're like, oh my word, what is this? The amount of choice compared to where you come from, where you know you have 3 different brands and that's what you get. Here you have a whole aisle of bread, you know. So we help to educate them around what is the right things, the healthy things to eat, bringing fruit and vegetables from this country, making them aware of what it is compared to where they come from. So it's those small things that we take for granted. Simple things. Some of these guys have never lived in a home that has indoor plumbing, that has lighting. We know that some of them have even tried to make fire pits in the middle of their apartments because they don't know what to do with the stove, you know. So it's those things that we take for granted that we have to educate.
And thank you for those are very tangible examples for us to wrap our mind around. And the former director, Phil Anderson, was on the podcast last fall in 2022, and you are currently the director.
Yes.
Can you explain to us what your role is?
Yeah. So what has happened is we realized, because we are supporting, we do not receive funding except what we can raise ourselves. We realized that we had a need not just for somebody to physically run the facility, rethink the strategy, and what we considered moving it to its next level. We also needed somebody that was out there willing to go and speak about what we do and raise funding and grants and so forth. So right now, Phil Anderson, the former executive director, is now on the road most of the time. He is our director of development. And I have taken on the reins of the executive director role, which encompasses everything else, you know, including him. I mean, he reports into me in a way, in many ways, but I have taken the accountability for the center, for the finances, for how we execute what we do.
Olbin, can you share a little bit about your role and responsibilities in Cactus?
Yeah, it's quite a bit. But I am the teen mentor, a teen mentor and a discipleship coordinator for the center itself. Teen mentor is helping teenagers within our community who's got some kind of problem with the law, and not even just the law, but normal teenagers. It's got some problems at home. I'm a mentor for them. All right. Discipleship. I do classes for Bible study classes for people who wants to know more about God, and you'll be surprised to see that a person that doesn't even know or go to a church or know the Nazarene church want to know more about God. And I had one-on-one sessions with people in their homes, just having a little Bible study for an hour and so forth. I'm also doing Meals on Wheels. It's another project that is available for our sickly and older people in Cactus. Then there's Snack Pack that we do during the summer, where we help the schools out in doing thing in getting the snack packs to the children. All right. Then there's a day-to-day maintenance of the building and the vehicles now and then that I look after and see to. And that's in a nutshell that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis.
One of the other things that I think we've been also assigned is to plant a church.
Mm-hmm.
because Cactus didn't have a Nazarene church, but it also doesn't have an English church at all. So it's only got one Spanish church. And so Olbin did take on that role as well, with the two of us, to plant a church in Cactus.
Where are you at in the planting process?
The church is running.
Oh, the church
We're
is
having
running.
church.
Okay.
We're having church every Sunday morning now.
Afternoon.
I keep saying morning. It's a new thing because our church starts at 1 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon. And the reason for that is we want to give the people that works on a Saturday just a little bit of time to sleep in. And Sunday is the only day that they really have off. So we want them to have an opportunity to come to church as well. That is why it's at 1 p.m. We have started out from from nothing. And God has helped us so far to start the church. We see people, about 40 to 55 people, 60 people on a Sunday afternoon. Yeah.
And when did the church start?
We started our first service was on Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday for the first time. And ever since then we had service. We are meeting our normal service. We started one, and then after service we have a meal to share with one another. And I think that's the thing we are trying to push is community between the people. Because there are 28 or 26 different nationalities living there. How do we cross these barriers? The only way I think is by having conversations with people, help them to know one another, learn more about one another. And I think that's a good way to do it. We want to bring the community together, even though they're from different countries and different cultures. It's God that brings us together. All right. So we are trying to motivate that and do that with our church members. We do not have a full-fledged church board at the moment, because we feel that the people that attends the church, they are still in a learning process of who God really is. Our goal is to bring God to the people, help them understand who God is, and what they mean to God. All right. And that is what we are trying to push. We realize that these people need the word. So for now, we just we have a skeleton board for our church.
Well, it's less than 6 months old, so obviously just getting things established. But I'm guessing one of the obviously primary purposes is sharing the word of God and sharing Jesus.
Yes.
It also provides a way for these individuals who everything in their life is about the work to have a safe place for community.
Absolutely. And their family is not here. So we become family. Our family is not here. And we're used to a Sunday afternoon lunch with family and friends. So we're developing that community ourselves so that others can also experience what we know we lack in being in Cactus. And when you have, I think at the moment we counted, we have 6 nationalities coming to our church. You need opportunities to bridge the gap between who they think each other are, if I can say that, and help them learn that they all have the same things in common. They're all refugees and asylum seekers. They all know trauma, So helping them build those bridges is important for us.
Now, you have a unique perspective and the fact that you did not grow up in the United States.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about where you grew up and what that context looked like?
Sure.
All right. We are from South Africa. I was born in the Eastern Cape. She was born in KwaZulu-Natal, another region within our country. All right. And I grew up knowing God. When I started out, how can I say, not open my eyes, but when I had an understanding of what was going on around me, my parents were already serving God, and I know quite a fair bit of what church is about. I've seen missionaries come to our country, come and work in our communities, and all those missionaries were basically from the US.
Yeah. I, on the other hand, I grew up in a single parent home. So my earliest years had always been ones of violence and trauma and fear. And so I knew about God. My mom was Catholic, although she didn't go to church because she was divorced and you weren't allowed to go to church. And my dad was a violent alcoholic, and they were divorced. And so I knew about God from a Catholic perspective. My grandparents, my paternal grandparents, ensured that we went to Mass, 6 a.m. Mass. But after that, my grandmother on my mom's side, my maternal grandmom, was Pentecostal. She came to take us to Sunday school. Mm-hmm. So although we didn't have Jesus in the house or anybody serving God in the house, she insisted that we explore and experience this. And as we grew older, we made decisions between the two, and most of us decided to go with the Pentecostal way. But over years, years of not having, when there's no stability in the home of who we serve, and there's a mixed message, it's hard to stay in the church. You know, you get to your teen years or your early 20s and you want to do your own thing. And so I did that. And so God brought me back in the harshest of ways. Yes, I had a very traumatic experience. But it was, I don't regret the way he did it, because it changed my life forever. And it gave me an opportunity. I got up one day with a gun to my head and somebody demanding sex on my chest, and I lived with myself in an apartment. But because Jesus rescued me from that moment, I surrendered my life to him, and I decided that as me, Alshandra or Ali, I mess up if I try to do things in my own strength. So I really surrendered to the Lord, and I said, okay, Lord, you direct this. I've figured out that the choices I make, the things I say, the things I do are not leading me to anything successful or even peaceful in my life. And so I surrendered to him at the age of 27 years old. And I said to him, here I am. If you can use anything, use me. And it started me on a journey that I could go on for hours explaining, because when you make a decision like that for Jesus, I found a Nazarene church at that point, and then my life in the Nazarene church started. And when you make that decision for Christ, he allows you to hand over everything, right? And he in turn says, let me teach you how much already your pride or your selfishness comes into play, you know? And there's this exchange that happens over years as he refines you to really give up the things that you hold close. And that's really how life got started in the Nazarene community. And when we met in the Nazarene church. Mm-hmm. We met in the Nazarene church and got married in the Nazarene church. We served together before that and then afterwards, and we've always served in the church. Yeah. I had a career, and so did he. We both had careers, but we were good lay people, you know, just doing what God asked us to do, until Olbin really can tell you the story of how he realized that actually God is calling him to the ministry.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we get to that call, can you share with us a little bit about your careers and just your life as lay people serving the church?
Sure. I worked in banking and software engineering, so I was the CIO of the bank I worked for.
Chief Information Officer.
That's correct. Okay. So an executive in the bank. I worked the entire department. Actually, I had quite a big staff setting, and you know, I'd really traveled once a year to places like London and Amsterdam. I in business class, you know, doing all of these things for the bank. So we were well off. Yeah. We were well off. I mean, we had a big 6-bedroom house, a 4 garage, sunken, massive pool in the backyard. We were what you would call the top end of people that lived in South Africa. But it didn't stop us from doing the work that God had called us to. I was still a worship pastor in the church. Olbin was the associate pastor when he took the call. But we were settled. We had more than enough, and we lacked for nothing, if I can put it that way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, can you share your call?
Yes. I was about 8 years old when I gave my life to the Lord. For growing up in a church, I attended Sunday school and all of it. But God spoke to me on a specific day that I need to surrender my life. It's not just knowing God, it's surrendering your life to Him. So I gave my life to the Lord on that day, and the call was clearly, you will preach. I want you to preach the word of God to people. Full stop. And so I carried on with life. I went to school. I lost my way. God came and He brought me back. All right. When I came back, I started a complete new journey with Him. And God took me to the places and stages in my life. And He showed me that, listen, these things that happened to you, it was my grace. I protected you. I kept you safe. It was my grace. Remember this call I gave you when you were 8 years old. And that's when it really started. I started, I moved from Port Elizabeth to Johannesburg, where I met Alshandra. We started out in ministry. And we ministered together. Praise team, youth, Sunday school, men's ministries. Those are all the things we did. And then 1 year, the Lord said to me, it's now time. You have to prepare yourself. All right? And then I felt the urge to go study so that I can be more useful with your ministry, okay? And I started a journey, started studying, working. And then I prospered so much within my work environment that they promoted me from a guy that was a fitter to a technician, from technician to supervisor, service manager. And that's how, was just God, all right, in how He brought me up within the company. And while I was working, I was still studying. And the Lord said to me, it's now time for you to step out. I did not know why you're still working. So I said, but Lord, why you want me to step out? I am almost like almost at the top of my career. I've done so much work. I've accomplished so much with your help. And look what I've done. How can I walk away from this? And please, Lord, my children are still in school. Not now. I've got a mortgage to pay. And the Lord asked me, do you trust me? All right. So I stepped away from a job that paid me a lot of money. New car every 3 months. I was working for Hyundai Motor Corporation. Fuel was paid up. We really lacked nothing. And so I went into full-time studying. I didn't know where was the next paycheck coming. To only be on my wife. But I said, I trust you, Lord. So I stepped out. 2 months later, they called me to be the assistant pastor of the church. And that's how the journey just started. And I became family minister. And yeah, so that's how we carried on. And in 2020, we asked the Lord, what is our next step within our ministry? Because you called us to this church cornerstone. To help with the youth and praise team, what is the next step? And then we started praying for Cactus. In fact, we started praying for Cactus in 2019 already. 2020, we asked God, what is the next step? 2021, the call came to Cactus.
So, connecting the dots a little bit, how did you even know about Cactus?
So Phil and Denise Anderson, who are the executive directors there, used to be our senior pastor at our church in South Africa. They were missionaries to South Africa. So we knew them for a long time. I think we met them in 2009, and we had been serving with them in Cornerstone before they left to come back to the States in 2016.
Because if I remember correctly, they were missionaries for 4 years and then stayed as pastors for
Correct.
4 more years.
Yes. Correct.
They came back to the States, lived in Illinois for a while,
Yes.
and then went down to Texas to Cactus
yes.
and for the Compassionate Ministry. So it was through the Andersons that you were connected to Cactus.
Yes.
Right.
And I mean, the years that we were praying for Cactus, they would say to us, we think you guys need to come And my response was, until God says move, I'm going nowhere. And I don't hear him telling me to move. You know, I mean, I love my job. I was good at it. But it was also a brilliant mission field, because I worked with other executives and I had the opportunity to minister Christ to people who had too much money and yet were miserable. You know, I know this because I would travel with them and think, my word, you guys are so sad. And I would say it, you need Jesus, you know? And so I would always have an opportunity to minister to them and pray with them. And I thought that that's exactly what God had called me to. We were busy in the church world, in our home. We had a 6-bedroom house. We had 10 people living there and 3 people actually family. Because God would ask us to take people off the park benches and to come and live with us and help get them back on their feet. And we'd have families that we would help and support. So I'm like, Lord, why would you move me? You know? But when God said, when they asked us in 2021, the last time they asked us, we think you need to come to Cactus. We said, okay, we will seriously pray about it. And we went into a prayer and fast and waited on the Lord. And it wasn't long that God said to us, he said to me, you need to let go. So here's the thing. You develop your identity around the things you do. And my identity was an executive, commanding people all day, building the most amazing solutions for the bank, you know, and I had to choose to surrender that to the Lord too, because I needed to take on whatever he needed me to be. And to walk away from that, the income, the amazing bonuses I received, you know, the fact that we could pay our daughter's schooling here in the US, in Olbin Nazarene University cash, for that to all go away, to not be there. I was like, Lord, are you sure this is what you're asking me to do? But I had always said to the Lord, when you say go, I will go. So I went to the organization and said, I'm giving you 3 months to give me somebody to shadow, to take on this role. I had been grooming people for the job because I also had a belief that I should never be longer in a position than 18 months before somebody else should be able to do my job. So I'd been grooming people and I said, I'm going to be going. They're like, no, don't do that. You can work for us anywhere in the world. Just take your laptop with. Come on, you can do this. And I went to the Lord and he said, I need you to be totally dependent on me. Because if you have that, you're not going to trust. Surrender it all to me. So then I said to them, sorry, I can't do that. I'm gone. And so it's been a journey of God teaching me different lessons. So here's the thing. I have a traumatic past, which means that I have a need to be in control as an outcome of the trauma of my life, right? And so here was God saying, give me the reins. Because as long as I had a job, guess what? I had control. I knew there was always money in the bank. I knew that if I wanted something, I could just buy it. I knew all of these things. And he was saying, let it go and trust me. So it felt like it feels like every day I'm walking backwards and he's holding my hand and leading, you know. But that, I think, was the biggest and the biggest stretch of my faith. And what a journey of seeing God operate when we let him and don't want to be God. Wow. He's teaching me the most amazing, amazing things about what it means to have faith. What it means to believe, for me, big one for me, that he's a good, good father. I didn't have a good father. But he's teaching me what a good, good father looks like every day. And I am grateful and I thank him that he's allowing me to be part of the journey of him bringing people to the knowledge of who he is, to partner with him. It's really an amazing experience.
That's a powerful story, to say the least. This is a little random. Most of the times we view missions as the United States sends people somewhere else. Yeah. And what are some obstacles that you had to get through to move from South Africa to the United States?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
We're gonna
Maybe
sit
a
all night.
couple. Maybe a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
You
wanna
go.
I think that, the US is not really geared to have people come on religious visas. I think I don't know if it's, I couldn't speculate on what it could be, but the process is quite stringent. Fortunately, the Nazarene community is worldwide, and the Nazarene movement of missionaries around the world, I think, is quite known. That I think that's the only thing that was working in our favor. That when our district here in West Texas petitioned for us to come, they were actually it was quite easy for that petition to happen, to get approved. That wasn't the hard part. The hard part was going to an embassy in South Africa and getting them to allow us to come. And of course, this is in the middle of COVID. And President Biden I think we had an appointment the 29th of November 2021 to go for our visa appointment in South Africa. And he closed the borders November 28th. At this point, Pastor Jeff, we have sold our home. I am no longer working. I stopped working at the end of November. So we have no car, no home, no job. And he shuts it down. All our plans just stuck like that. And we were like, okay, Lord, this is on you. And the Lord showed his hand, firstly. It's almost like he had a mini assignment for us in the middle of this. And people who were friends of ours for many years, but we weren't close friends, came over the day we had to leave our house and said, hey, we've prepared a place for you to stay until the borders open again and you can get your visas. And so we stayed there, but it was a time of us pouring into them and speaking into their lives, which I think they really appreciated, and said that they think this was a God thing. But at the end of that, we then got the borders open. He opened the borders at the end of December, so we started looking for appointments. Closest appointment was June of 2022. We're like, Lord. And these guys were saying, listen, it doesn't matter how long you have to stay, we are happy to have you. And then the Lord just opened doors, and what was June became March for the appointment. What was March went to January, and we got an appointment, got our visas 3 days later, and we were on a flight. And again, as I say, God showed his faithfulness time and time again.
And the immigration system has a lot of different hoops to jump through,
Correct.
a lot of different stages,
Correct.
and it takes a long time and correct me if I'm wrong, it takes a long time for somebody who wants to stay here permanently to actually have that ability to stay permanently.
Absolutely, yeah. And for us, I mean, planting a church is not something you can do in 2.5 years, right? Our visas are for 2.5 years. We have one opportunity to renew the visa, and that will happen next year. We can renew for another 2.5 years to bring us to 5 years. Then we cannot renew again. Those visas, they don't allow us on that visa for longer than 5 years. So then we have a different problem, and we have to look for an alternative pathway in immigration. And the only other pathway is for our district to apply for a worker's green card for us. So we'd apply for a 10-year green card for us. But for that to happen, because it's a religious visa and a religious track, as they call it, it takes 3 years to come through. So what we'll have to do next year is apply for our renewal of visa and at the same time apply for the green card. And pray that by the time our second visa runs out, we have our green card. So that's literally the process we will face.
And part of the ministry of Cactus is helping individuals
Yes,
walk
sir.
through that process.
Hey, here's the thing. We are in the process of certifying to do immigration for other people through US. Yeah, we do it at the moment. We both have been through the training and we're certifying with the US government to do it for others, but we will face a few challenges ourselves.
Well, I appreciate you sharing some of those, just things that, as a natural born citizen, I wouldn't think of.
Yeah.
Right? And just so many different hoops to jump through, and then obviously COVID
Didn't help.
was a game changer, to say the least. But before we end, I find it so inspiring that both of you had moments where God basically said, leave everything you have and follow me.
Yeah.
And so many times we're hesitant of that.
Yeah.
And particularly in the United States, we're real comfortable. Right? We have everything we need, and we may help our neighbor. We may make other sacrifices, but from a standpoint of quitting our job, selling our car, selling our home, basically only having our suitcases and those types of
2
things.
suitcases each.
That can be a foreign concept for us. So for anyone who has felt God call them to leave whatever that is, whether it's small or great, what words of wisdom or challenge do you have for them?
I think the challenge that God gave me was the story of the young rich ruler. And it's about how much do you love him, right? Or what else? What are your other priorities that outdo your love for your Savior? That story was really how I think of our life. We were doing, what did the young rich ruler say? He said, I follow your commandments, I love my neighbor, I love you with all my heart, mind, and soul. But when Jesus said, okay then, leave everything and follow me, he couldn't do it, right? And I think that's where we got to, that space. The risk of comfort that can keep you from truly experiencing God in miraculous ways. Because you're comfortable with what you have. You have enough that you don't have to desperately go say, Lord, where's my next meal coming from? So as a result, we can become mediocre. So the challenge I would offer is that if God is asking you to let go, the question I would ask is, just where does your love for him feature in the list of your life, I know my life was threatened. I nearly lost it. So I know that I would rather have it in his hands for him rescuing me from that than do it my own way. So that would be me.
Yeah, for me it was what I was preaching after coming out from a full-time job into an assistant pastor job or work. And I used to preach about trusting God. And Proverbs 3 verse 5 to 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. All right, it means that one piece says a lot. So it was to me, with everything you have, Olbin, everything that you've invested in, everything you have, trust the Lord. And what will he do? He will make your crooked paths straight. And I think that's the one thing that helped me through this transition. Okay, and what I can say to people is to trust in the Lord with everything you have, finances, your possessions, your job. Trust him. Your relationship with your wife, with your children, your relationship with the church and with others. Trust God in every way, and he will direct you. And God came through for us. We are testimonies today when we completely trust God in everything we have and listen to him. I think nothing can go wrong.
Yeah.
That's great. That's powerful, inspiring stuff. Anything else you guys would like to share? Wanted to make sure if you had something else on your heart and mind that you had an opportunity before we ended today.
Pastor Jeff, I'm really blessed. Okay, I'm excited about what you're doing, you and your church here in Burlington. When I first heard the story of what you did, what you guys are doing, I said to the team that was in Cactus, I would like to come, to just come and help, put my hand to the plow, put my hand in the field and help. That was my desire. And God has made a way for us miraculously. I don't know. But yes, here we are. We helped this morning, and it is such a joy. And I'm inspired by what you guys are doing for missions. You know, they change the lives of people that they never met, as I said yesterday before. And they are investing in the future of these people. God's word is preached to these nations from all over. If you look at Cactus, it's like another world in the United States, different countries. So your contributions and what you are doing here, we benefit from it. Other people benefit from it. And that's where I bring the scripture in again, where Jesus says that where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. Where your heart is, that's where your treasure is. All right. So you guys are investing in other people's lives, and that investment is heavenward.
Amen. Yeah. I think if I had to say one last thing, it would be that if we believe, if anyone who serves Jesus believes that He is at work in the hearts of men at all times, we will make space to let Him work and use us. Doesn't mean you have to do something as radical as we did, but it may just be in your everyday life, in the place that you work, that God is saying, listen, I'll tell you when it's time to approach that person. I'll tell you when it's time to live loudly for me in this moment, because we don't know whose life can be saved through the simple things that we do, because we are running out of time. And we should all be passionate about making sure that we go to heaven and take as many people as we can with us. One day, the CEO of our company asked me that. What do I want to do in the next 5 years? I said, I want to make my way to heaven and take as many people as I can with me. Of course, she was like, okay. But it's the truth. If that is the vision that we have, that we go to heaven and take as many as we can with, just imagine what God could do when we made that space.
That's great. Thank you for sharing with us today. Thank you for taking time and just your brief window of opportunity here in Burlington. Thank you for being partners in ministry. We appreciate you guys, and I'm confident that we're going to be lifelong friends because of Jesus.
Sure. Yeah. Amen.
And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited to have known you and excited to continue to know you. So thank you for being here and sharing with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us for this podcast. Be on the lookout for how God does uncommon work in common life. And please subscribe to never miss an episode.